one of the things was I was convinced that there was no happiness in the material world. I'd been studying religions in graduate school for 3 years, and I decided that what I thought religions at their different religions at their highest level had in common was stated by Buddha, that material life is suffering. The cause of the suffering is our desires. One should become free from those desires. I believe that. So I was really understood what the material world was like. I've been especially interested in Hinduism and Vedanta in graduate school also. So in the fall of 1969, I saw some devotees chanting on the college campus. And so I went to investigate in the mood of an anthropologist, sort of. It was interesting to me that the missionary effort was now going from east to west. I thought this was some change in the spiritual ecology of the world. Of course, I mean, there was a handful of devotees jumping up and down and chanting, and I thought, God, I'd never do a thing like that. But I went up, I got a little pamphlet called Who is Crazy? And then a friend of mine called me up about a week later and said, hey, there's Far Out Love Feast, you have to come. So I was induced to come to the Krishna temple. It just started in Philadelphia, so we rented a little row house in the campus of the University of Pennsylvania. I was impressed because the devotee who was giving a lecture, he was kind of harsh. I think the devotees were in those days. There was a whole audience of student and hippie types. They smelled very strongly of marijuana and patchouli. And he was telling them about the regulative principles, like no illicit sex, no intoxication, no eating. And then I became interested, because I thought, wow, he's telling the truth. Although the people around me were getting kind of disgruntled. I started to pay attention, and he talked about the difficulty of controlling the senses unless you give your senses a spiritual engagement. And he suggested that it starts with the tongue, specifically chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Now, this was a new idea to me. I'd had 4 courses in Vedanta, all taught by, 3 of them taught by Bengalis, professors, and nobody ever said anything like that before, because they were all impersonalists. So this idea of spiritual engagement with the senses was something new. And so he explained the chanting of Hare Krishna, and so I thought, well, let me try it and see what happens. I was already a vegetarian, which was odd in those days, but there was no good reason why I did it. Just it felt cleaner and neater. I had a friend who was a vegetarian, so my wife and I took it up. So I got some japa beads from the devotees, and I went home and I started chanting, just to see what would happen. An innocent experience compared to the things we were doing for spiritual realization in those days. And when I began to chant, I felt my consciousness change, and my spiritual and my material desires began to decrease. Actually, quite strikingly. It scared me. I stopped chanting. I didn't know who these devotees were, what they were doing. So cautious, but then when I stopped chanting, I felt awful. So I started chanting again, went back. So that's how it began, with that kind of experience and kind of openness to what Krishna consciousness had to offer. Many people, the idea of losing their material desires is the last thing they want. I was different.